Ohayou gozaimasu. Hajimemashite.
Good morning. Very nice to meet
Watashi
you.
wa Keren
I am
desu.
Keren.
Yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
Nice to meet you all.
I'm so excited to be with you here today. It's my second time in Tokyo, and every time I visit, I find there is incredible technology, innovation, and people in Japan. So as much as I'm looking forward to talk with you today, I'm also looking forward to learn from you this morning. As you heard, my name is Keren Elazari. What I would like to speak to you about are some of the biggest problems that the world faces right now in the field of cybersecurity. But apart from the problems, I would also like to suggest some solutions. And I would like to tell you why I think it is the hackers and the security professionals that might save the world someday. So let's get started, shall we? If I ask you right now, what was the single worst security problem or breach experienced in the past year, in 2014? You might each have different ideas because the past year has been dramatic when it comes to cybersecurity. Maybe you are thinking about what happened at Target and Home Depot in the retail market in America, where millions of credit card numbers were stolen. Perhaps you're thinking about something else. What about the game over variant of the popular Zeus malware, which took it to peer-to-peer levels? Maybe you have in mind all of the problems discovered in fundamental encryption technologies, like SSL Heartbleed, or the shell shock bash bug, or the poodle bug. There have been so many problems. Or perhaps what you have in mind are now the attacks on the once secure Apple iOS ecosystem. Or maybe you are thinking about attacks on critical infrastructure, like energy generation and electric powers. Perhaps you are more concerned with privacy and the invasions to privacy that we have learned about in the past year or so. Indeed, there is no doubt the past year has been very dramatic indeed. Probably in December, what everyone is thinking about, though, is what happened to Sony Pictures in the United States and the massive attack launched by hackers calling themselves the Guardians of Peace. It is now rumored that the attack on Sony was so hard to recover from, the company is actually considering to delay the publishing of their movie about North Korea, which perhaps was the reason behind this attack. So a very dramatic year. A year for us as security professionals to look at the world that we are trying to secure and realize that the problems are everywhere. And I'm sure you've heard this saying before, but I have many friends who are in the security business, and they like to joke. They say there are only two types of organizations out there: those that have been hacked and those that don't know it already. And that means almost every organization is a ticking time bomb with a massive attack waiting to happen or just waiting to be discovered. The lesson here is that almost everyone can be attacked. And if there are people that know how to get everywhere, it's hackers. They can find access into any system, any computer, any environment. This is a lesson I learned myself almost 20 years ago. I was a bit young, and it was the year 1995. And I learned this lesson from this lady. Maybe some of you recognize her. It is the Hollywood actress Angelina Jolie. In the year 1995, she starred in a film called Hackers. When I saw that movie, and I was about 14 at the time, I realized that hackers are people with incredible power right in their hands. They can get everywhere. They can do almost anything they want. And sometimes they can also be the heroes. This is the lesson I learned from Angelina Jolie. Since then, I've spent almost 20 years in the security community and the security industry. I've worked with organizations like technology providers, defense contractors, telecom companies, consulting organizations, really all across the board. And I gathered different perspectives from working with different companies. I also worked with the Israeli military. As you might know, in Israel, women serve in the army next to the men. And I worked with an information security department of the Israeli military. I earned my CISSP diploma in 2007. In the past 2 years, most of my work is in the academic field, working with Singularity University in California and Tel Aviv University in Israel. Other than that, I am an industry analyst working with GigaOM from California. As an academic researcher, as an analyst, what I do is look at the trends and look at the phenomena that is happening in the cybersecurity world. And I try to find the story. I try to find the trend to understand what is going on. As a storyteller, I often seek to take a different perspective at things. And today I'd like to offer you my perspective. If we look at the past year, if we look at all of these attacks, and if we take a look at the future, what we will learn is that behind the corner, technology is waiting for us, but we don't yet know how it will affect our lives. We don't know what are going to be the biggest security problems in 2015, because technology is changing very rapidly. But one prediction that we can already reach is that we will have big security problems. So now is the time to start looking at them, and maybe even working together to solve those problems. And I reached the conclusion that we can work together to solve those problems earlier this year, when I was invited to speak at the 30th annual TED conference. The TED event is quite unique. It's a massive media event that also films all of the talks, and then they are accessed online by millions of people. In my talk at TED, I claimed that one of the ways to solve the security challenges in the years ahead is to take advantage of the hacker community, to work together with the hacker community and look at hackers as the immune system for the information age. If we think about it, hackers work separately, but together. They are different individuals, like organisms or cells, but they all reach a similar goal. They find security problems. And whether they report on the problem, disclose the problem, or try to exploit it, we all learn about it, and then we get better. This is part of how the evolution of technology works, in fact. So today, I'd like to think about this immune system analogy and suggest that actually we can all be part of this immune system. We can all work together, hackers and security professionals and industry vendors. But that's not enough. We have to act now. Now is the time to move forward. And the reason for that is because these security challenges are waiting to happen. They're right around the corner. And some of them have been devastating in the past year alone. So we really can't take the risk of letting more security breaches like that happen in the next few years and not do anything about it. So today I am offering to you a choice between doing something about it and not doing something about it. And in order to convince you to make the choice, to act now, I will talk about 5 of the biggest security problems, but also 5 of the things that we can all do as security professionals to save the world. Now, I'd like to start with what is perhaps the biggest problem of them all. And that is that we are not just talking about securing the World Wide Web. We're not just talking about securing the internet. I like to talk about securing cyberspace. Now, that sounds like a big name, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the term cyber. You've heard it before. Some security professionals even say that cyber is a marketing word, or that it is a synonym for the internet. I'd like to suggest that cyberspace is even greater than that. And let's go back in history and understand where cyber comes from. This gentleman is an American math professor, or at least he was. His name is Norbert Wiener, and in 1948, Professor Norbert Wiener invented a new scientific discipline. He was looking at how technology is changing, how remote command and communication technologies are transforming the world. And he was looking for a name to give this new scientific discipline, describing the transformative nature of new technologies like remote command and control technologies. So in order to come up with the name, he actually borrowed from someone else. And I will show you from whom in a minute. This is his book from 1948, Cybernetics, Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. It was published more than 60 years ago, but I think it's more than relevant today in the 21st century, when we actually have remote command and control communications everywhere. When Norbert Wiener was looking for a name for this discipline, cybernetics, he actually got his inspiration from this guy. This is the captain, the man who runs the boat. And the ancient Greeks, who were an empire and a city-state empire in the Mediterranean Sea, had a very powerful armada. And each ship had a captain. The captain of the ship is the guy who says where, when, how fast, and in which direction will the ship sail. This man is called in Greek kybernetes. And from the Greek kybernetes, Professor Wiener invented cybernetics. But I don't think that he realized quite how relevant remote command and control communication technologies are going to be. I don't know if Professor Wiener even imagined that one day humanity will have robots on Mars running around, communicating back to Earth, and even writing on Twitter about it. So today we have these types of technologies everywhere, and cyberspace is also on Mars. By the way, can you guess what is the most popular language in the galaxy? Any ideas? Last week I gave a speech in Belgium, and one of the suggestions was Klingon. But actually, the most popular language in the galaxy is not Klingon. It is, in fact, Java. Yes, it's true. There are billions of devices that are running Java, including the Mars rover, the robot running around on Mars. And these are devices, not just computers or web servers or databases. This can be anything from a car to ATMs to smartwatches. And I think today, in this conference, we will learn about how some of these devices, like smart homes and cars, are going to be hacked in the near future. So in the past 25 years, this has been the story of cybersecurity. These are the top 10 computing and software environments in which most vulnerabilities were found in the past 25 years. But if we look at the future, this is going to be the story of cybersecurity. It is going to be remote command and communication technologies. It's going to be satellites and radio frequency and location information, GPS, and systems for running airplanes in the sky and ships in the ocean. All of this stuff is going to be part of cybersecurity. So the same technologies that allow a group of hackers from the University of Texas to transmit a false location signal, a false GPS signal, to a super yacht and make it go off course. This is part of cybersecurity. And sending radio signals to embedded insulin pumps that save the lives of diabetic patients, but can also hack their body and transmit too much insulin into the blood. This is also part of cybersecurity. And hacking into satellites, part of cyberspace, a problem for cybersecurity. And something local, perhaps, hacking into a Bluetooth-enabled toilet. Yes, it's also a problem for cybersecurity. So how can we face this big problem? It's not just about the internet. It's not just about the World Wide Web. Cyberspace is a lot bigger than that. It's all of these different technologies. Any solutions? Well, maybe we can join the Amish, which is a group of religious Christians in the United States that do not believe in the use of technology. But I heard last summer that they already have smartphones. So maybe that's not the best solution as well. We have to secure all of the things, all of these different things. And these are so many different technology environments. And I haven't even mentioned the new web giants, the companies that are going to probably have some of the most vulnerabilities for the next 25 years. So perhaps the first step, the first big problem, but also the first step, is to realize that cybersecurity is about all of these different environments, all of these together. It's the technologies that we used in the past 25 years and the technologies that we will use in the next 25 years. It is the web giants that have all of our information and our web services, but also the fundamental technologies like OpenSSL and Bash and the infrastructure that we all use every day. All of this together is part of the problem for cyberspace. So if it's all one big ecosystem, and by the way, this is an image of the internet and connected devices from a few years ago. Right now, it's even more complex and more connected. So if it's all connected, then we can all be part of its immune system. We can all work together to solve the problems. So that was problem number one. Cyberspace is complex, but it's all connected, and we can work to solve those problems. But problem number two, this space, this cyberspace, is filled with very creative, very innovative, and very collaborative bad guys. Criminals, spies, malicious attackers. They are very smart, and they don't mind working together. They share information, they share attack techniques, and they keep inventing new things every day. Every day there is a new exploit or a new problem. And they'll do whatever they want to get what they want. If it's your money or your documents or stopping the publication of a new Sony Pictures movie, they'll do anything. In the past year, we've seen tremendous innovation in the cyber criminal underground. One example is the peer-to-peer variant of the Zeus malware. If you could raise your hand and tell me who here has heard about Zeus? It's probably the most popular malware in the planet, right? And it has many variants. Since its source code was published a few years ago, many other criminals have taken the source code and created better, new versions of it. So they are not afraid to collaborate and share tools between them. And another big problem we've seen in the past year are crypto lockers. Crypto lockers are new types of malware, perhaps old new types of malware, that encrypt the hard drives of the computers they infect, and then request money, a ransom, to release the files. This is also called ransom software or ransomware. And it's a rising problem in the criminal underworld. Another innovative technique that criminals use to get your money or to infect your PC is malvertising. Malvertising is the combination of malicious and advertising. And there are so many ads and banners like this on the internet that masquerade as legitimate ads. And sometimes they can appear on the front page of the New York Times or the Yahoo homepage. But once you click them, the malware gets dropped, downloaded to your machine, and your device is infected. In fact, in a recent survey, Cisco claimed that people are 182 times more likely to get infected by clicking on one of these malicious ads than by visiting an adult content website. So it's very dangerous to surf online, even in a very innocent website like Yahoo homepage or the New York Times. And there is a new problem as well: fake antivirus programs. These are not just ads. These are ads that make the users think they need to install this antivirus program, which then actually installs a virus. These are just a few examples of how innovative criminals have become, using the security industry against it. Of course, we are now learning about malicious software for smartphones. There are many variants of that as well. And one of the newest additions to the past year, 2014, point-of-sale malware. Malware which seeks to infect the point of sale, the cash registers, at places like Target or Home Depot or other popular retail locations, and grab the credit card numbers directly from there. What all of these examples show us is that the bad guys know the name of the game. And the name of the game is to innovate and automate and create new techniques and new growth and revenue engines all the time. They are not resting. Maybe they have conferences like this to learn from each other, but they're not taking a day off from working hard to steal our money. So this is the second big problem. What could be the solution? One approach could be to keep calm and carry on. And some security vendors have suggested that cybercrime is part of the world and we should accept it. I don't agree. And maybe we can do something different. Maybe we can do the same thing that the criminals are doing. Share, collaborate, and innovate. Work together to learn about these new techniques and figure out new ways to protect against them. Collaboration and information sharing programs are already showing great promise all over the world. I heard that there are some initial information sharing programs in Japan as well. I'm a big fan of the practice of sharing details of the attacks, the intelligence that you gathered, And I think it's time to share. It's time to open up and tell everyone what has happened, even though many organizations are embarrassed to say that they were attacked. The reality of 2014, as we've seen, is that almost any organization can be a target. So really, there is not much to be ashamed about, is there? And one saying is that sharing is caring. And by sharing information, you are caring for the ecosystem that you share with your friends. But I hear from many security professionals and many organizations that they don't care about other people. They would just like to protect their own environment, their own enterprise, their own computing systems, their own little piece of heaven, as it were, and make sure that they are safe, and it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. So why should you care? Why should anyone care? This brings me to the third big problem. It's not just about cyber criminals anymore. In the past year, we've learned that there are massive resources, huge resources, hard at work, actually making the world vulnerable, keeping the world vulnerable and making it less safe for everyone else. It's not just the cyber criminals. In the past year, we've learned that certain government agencies have spent millions of dollars on finding new software vulnerabilities, but not so they can fix the vulnerabilities, but rather so they can exploit them. We've heard about a weak crypto algorithm that was deliberately kept weak for 10 years, and a very well-known company received a vast amount of money to keep this algorithm everywhere, although it was weak. Or the Heartbleed OpenSSL bug. When everyone learned about Heartbleed bug in OpenSSL in April of this year, it was considered a massive problem. But the reality is that a certain government agency had known about it for years. And everybody uses SSL. Every country, every organization uses SSL. So this organization, this agency, chose to keep it vulnerable instead of fixing it for the whole world. But there is something that really makes my heart bleed, as it were. And these are front page articles like this. Published in Time magazine earlier this year, this article called World.She talks about the new trade in software vulnerabilities. There are private companies that develop new software vulnerabilities, also known as zero-day vulnerabilities, and they weaponize them. They create working exploits and then sell them to the highest bidder. So that means there is a small group of individuals and companies making a lot of money by making everyone else vulnerable. And this is part of the big problems that we have to face. There are massive resources at work to make companies like that and government agencies, like I mentioned, keep finding new vulnerabilities and new problems. And they're doing their job. That's what they want to do. And that means we all have to work much harder. So I'd like to suggest a solution to that, or one solution to that. And my solution would be, don't keep your bugs to yourself. Very simple. The more unknown software vulnerabilities are kept silent and secret, everyone else remains insecure. And if you are a security researcher, or a malware researcher, or even a security professional in your organization, and you find a problem, you find a bug, you find a vulnerability, I think that the best approach is to make it public and known. And I think there is a saying from a Supreme Court judge in the United States, and he said this about 100 years ago. He claimed that there is no better disinfectant than the light of day. And I think this also holds true for when it comes to software vulnerabilities. Next slide, please, on the Japanese version. Thank you. Perfect. The light of day. So by making the bugs and the vulnerabilities that we find known to the public, we can make companies fix their technology, and we can all become more secure. Think about the immune system analogy. If we keep all of the viruses secret, how can we develop a solution? How can the immune system become stronger and protect against it? We have to publish security vulnerabilities and bugs. One fantastic way to get more bugs found are bug bounty programs. I heard that bug bounty programs are starting to come up in Japan. You might have one or two like this, but they're still not very popular. I think that bug bounty programs are fantastic ways to get more security vulnerabilities found. One popular program is the Facebook bug bounty program. These programs are a way for a company like Facebook to pay independent hackers and security researchers rewards for disclosing vulnerabilities in their code. And it's not just Facebook who is doing it. In fact, there are more than 100 companies in Silicon Valley that now have published bug bounty programs. And they've paid more than millions of dollars for security researchers from all over the world. Facebook say that they've paid about $2 to $3 million just in their own bug bounty program. And it's a fantastic way to get more vulnerabilities found, harness the power of the global hacker community, and reward them for their findings. Another great bug bounty program is the Internet Bug Bounty Plan. This was started by a company called HackerOne. And their idea was that some technologies, like PHP and Perl and OpenSSL, are technologies that we all rely on and use, but there's nobody working to secure them and find the problems. So by coming up with a budget for a reward program, a bug bounty program for these technologies, they are making cyberspace safer for everyone. And this is an image from a Japanese publication. And I'm not sure I got the joke of it, but I understand that bug bounty programs are beginning their way in Japan in the past year. And I'm very positive about it. And I think there is great promise there. But let's say you don't find bugs. Let's say you're not into security research and you don't discover bugs by yourself. Okay, what about exploits? Maybe you found a new exploit. One thing to do about it is to upload it to the exploit database. And if you're a company or an organization that develops technology, I would suggest you take a look at the exploit database. You might be surprised to find some exploits against your own technology there. This has happened to me many times, where I go to consult or speak with big software companies, and I ask them, okay, what's the situation with exploits and vulnerabilities in your code? And they say, oh, we're secure. We don't have any exploits in the wild. There are no vulnerabilities. But if you go online to a database like this, or the open source vulnerability database, and you type in the company name or the technology product name, the software suite, you find many bugs are still being exploited against their technology, and they didn't even know about it. So one way is to look in these databases, exploit database and the open source vulnerability database, and you might find your technology or software that you use is already listed there. But let's say you don't find security vulnerabilities or exploits. Okay, what about new malware? What about a new file that you discovered on your system and you suspect that it might be malicious? What do you do then? Probably you try to research it yourself or you send it to a lab. But another approach could be to upload it to Virus Total. How many of you here are familiar with this website, Virus Total, over here? Have you known about it? Fantastic. Many of you have known and used this product. By the way, it's a service offered for free since Google acquired the website and they are running it. And in this website, you can upload a suspected file and have it tested with more than 50 different anti-malware engines. But even if it is not discovered as a suspicious file, it is then sent onwards to the security vendors to start developing the signatures for it, to start identifying it. So again, think about an immune system. We all share the information, and we can create new signatures against new malware. But of course, some of you are perhaps not vulnerable or not exploitable in the worlds of Taylor Swift. Well, actually, this is not the popular American singer Taylor Swift, but the Twitter parody account called Swift on Security. And the reason I mention this is because, again, even at this stage, there are some organizations and some companies that think we are not a problem. We are secure. There are no vulnerabilities in our product. We are safe. Well, that brings me to the fourth big problem. We are all as vulnerable as our weakest links. No organization or person in the 21st century is an island. We are all relying on services, technology, solutions, partners. We have customers. We have colleagues. We work with other technology systems. We are part of an ecosystem. Nobody is isolated. And that means that even if, for instance, you are a massive American company like Target, even if you're a company that invests very heavily in cybersecurity, Target had a budget for security more than $1 million, some of the most innovative new technologies in place, yet it was still hacked. How is this possible? Well, the reason is because this organization was hacked first. This organization is called Fazio Mechanical Services. And I wouldn't be surprised if you've never heard about them, because this is a small company from Pennsylvania that handles refrigerator maintenance. And this was the refrigerator maintenance supplier for Target, the massive American retailer. And while Target invests very heavily in cybersecurity, Fazio Mechanical Services do not. And Fazio did not even have basic antivirus in place. So the attackers who wanted to get into Target first hacked Fazio, an easy target. And as a supplier of Target, Fazio had access to the Target supplier portal. From there, the hackers were able to get into the Active Directory inside Target, and that was their first point into the organization. From there, they were able to get into the point-of-sale systems and steal millions of credit cards. But it all started with one refrigerator company in Pennsylvania that doesn't even have a basic antivirus. We are all as weak as our weakest partner. Even a massive defense company like Lockheed Martin, who creates the next generation fighter jet, the F-35 bomber fighter, even they are as weak as their weakest partner. And in this case, one of the suggested reasons that Lockheed Martin was hacked in 2011 was because their security provider, in this case, RSA, was hacked. Lockheed Martin used the RSA Secure ID one-time password token, which meant they have pretty strong authentication. So the attackers first got into RSA to get the secret information and the algorithm that generated this one-time password tokens. Now, who is behind this attack? There are many rumors, but I think one image is worth 1,000 words. This is the J22 model from Chengdu, China. I think you'll find it looks quite similar to the F-35 model made by Lockheed Martin. So, like I said, we are only as weak as our weakest partners. And sometimes, even if our partner is a multi-billion-dollar security company, we will still get hacked. So it might be a matter of time. Even if your organization has not been attacked, it might be your partner, your customers, your employees getting attacked at home. And the second part of this problem is we have an illusion. We think our borders are being defended by fierce cyber warriors. But the reality is there are no borders in cyberspace. Everybody is on the front line. Remember, we are all connected. So we don't really have these fierce cyber warriors defending us. It's each and every one of us who is or needs to be that warrior on the front line. We are all connected. This image is from the Ghostclick, also known as DNS changer, malware infection a few years ago. Now, this was a Trojan used mostly for clickjacking and other types of cybercrime. However, this image of almost 4 million infected devices shows a very clear picture. The attackers didn't care where the computers they infected were. They didn't care if it was a security organization or a small company. Even NASA, the American Space Agency, had infected devices. And what this means is that if your machine is infected, then you're part of the problem. You're spreading the infection onwards. Think about the immune system analogy. So if you are not part of the solution, if you're not part of the immune system, you are probably going to be part of the problem. So another suggestion on a way to solve this. There are many people out there that are very happy. The masses, people that use their computer or their smartphone every day. And they're not concerned with cybersecurity. They don't realize that they are a part of the problem. So we have to empower them. We have to help them become part of the solution. In a way, I think we would like all of those happy people to be more like us. Like security professionals, always thinking about the next threat, always thinking about security challenges, always trying to stay one step ahead of the attacker. One way to do this is called crypto parties. These are very popular events in Europe. And a crypto party is a voluntary event, informal, like a party, where security professionals teach basic security skills to everyday people. They teach them about cryptography, about staying safe and private online, and they make them a little bit more powerful. There is another way to empower the masses. And there is someone in the audience who has participated in one of these in the past. This is called Red Cyber Team. And this is, in a way, an experiment started by a good friend of mine who is actually sitting here in the front row, and he will speak to you later. His name is Inbar. So a group of security professionals from Tel Aviv came together as volunteers to perform voluntary red team security testing for an organization that could not afford it and did not really have security in mind. Inbar, is it okay if I say the type of organization? The type, yes, but not the name. Okay. So this organization is a medical environment, a hospital in central Israel. And they didn't have any security budget in place. But after the red team came with their cool hats and performed a very basic and free security assessment, showing the hospital manager exactly what they could do, that brought security to the top of their mind. It brought cybersecurity into the agenda for that organization. So as security professionals, that's another way you can help the masses, help them, empower them, make them safer, work like an immune system. Volunteer to perform assessments like that for organizations that are not familiar with cybersecurity or that don't invest in it. Another way is by organizing what is sometimes called a cyber fire drill. This is like an earthquake preparedness test or a fire drill where you make everyone in your organization get ready for dealing with an attack scenario. How do you know that something went wrong? What are the first indicators? What is the first response? How to deal with an emergency situation in cyberspace. I learned last week that the city of San Diego in the United States is performing cyber drills and exercises for businesses in California as a joint voluntary venture with the Naval Postgraduate School, which is a university belonging to the American Navy. So by this point, I told you about 4 big problems. Before we move on to the last big problem, I want to give you an idea or suggest an opportunity to get some bonus points in our attempt to solve all of the problems. According to a recent survey by Cisco, there are 1 million security professionals needed in the world right now. That means that we need 1 million more security professionals. And so for us, as hackers, as security researchers, as security professionals, that means we have to start creating more security professionals. We have to reach out to schools and universities to be mentors or start internship programs for new security professionals. Why should we care about this? We can just move on as we were and not think about creating more security professionals. The market will still demand 1 million security professionals. So everybody can become a security professional, but they won't have the skills and the knowledge and the qualifications that we would like them to have. So that should be a good reason to start thinking about making more security professionals right now. And now I'd like to move on to the 5th and final problem, 5th and final big problem, as it were, for cybersecurity. And I call this problem the gap. Not because of the clothing store, but because of the gap between the security industry, us here in this room, security professionals and hackers, and the rest of the world. And until the real Taylor Swift suggests that we start talking about information security, we will still have a gap between the popular opinion about cybersecurity and what we as professionals know is the reality of it. So the first way to deal with this problem is, of course, to mind the gap, to understand there is this difference between how we see security issues and how the public sees security issues and how the media talks about them. And many times when I speak to media or when I consult or do speaking engagements, this is the idea that the public has. Cyber attacks. There are millions of cyber attacks. Everybody is under millions of cyber attacks each day. And I like to ask them, millions of what? What are you counting? Millions of port scans? Millions of new malware variants? Millions of infected PCs? It's very important to bring the conversation to the level of reality. And one way to do it is by asking questions like that. And again, remember the immune system analogy. If we're talking about bacteria and viruses, it's very easy to count 1 million organisms of bacteria that might be living everywhere. Yet not everyone gets sick all of the time. So keep this in mind. when you're told there are millions of cyber attacks, bring the conversation to reality. Mind the gap between what we know is happening and what the attacks are and what the public thinks about it. And there is also a gap between us as security professionals and the top management, the executives leading organizations that we're working with. And we want to make them invest more in cybersecurity, but we don't know how. Well, here's one way to do it. You can ask the question, very simple question, how much does your organization spend on coffee each year? If you're spending more on coffee than on cybersecurity, you're going to have a problem. Now, this was a suggestion by Richard Clarke, who was the former White House chief cybersecurity officer for the Bush government, Bush administration 10 years ago. But it's still true. There are some organizations and some management executives that are more concerned with the coffee budget than with making sure the organization is secure. So we have to mind that gap, and we have to start closing that gap. Now, as I reflect on all of the things that I told you, let's give it a moment to look at these big problems. Some of these are very serious, major problems. But here are the good news. All of these issues, these things, are things that we can all change, that we can do something about right now. And some people in their organization or environment, well, they say, I would love to change the world, but they don't give me access to the source code. Well, here is the thing. When it comes to these problems and solving them for the future, I told you about 5 things that we can all do right now, and we don't need access to the source code of the world. We can start making these changes happen in our organizations. So let's summarize. Number 1, think about securing cyberspace, not just the internet or the World Wide Web. Cyberspace is complex, and it has many different technologies in it. Number 2, the bad guys are collaborative, so we should be as collaborative. Share information, innovate in our defense techniques, and work together. Number 3, don't keep your bugs to yourself. There is no better disinfectant than the light of day. Report on vulnerabilities, disclose exploits, start a bug bounty program in your organization, or contribute to another program. These are all things that you can do. Number 4, there are masses out there, happy, shiny people that don't think they are part of the problem. And we have to make them powerful. We have to help them defend themselves. Bring them into our world, the cybersecurity world. Problem number 5, there is a gap. The gap between the security industry and the general public, and the gap between us and our managers. And by finding this gap, identifying it, and trying to bridge across it, we can make cyberspace safer. So with that, I'd like to give you one last message. The future is already here. 2015 is around the corner. New attacks, new vulnerabilities, new technologies, and new problems will be discovered. The question is, how will you choose to protect it? Thank you. Kana-san, do we have a time for one question? Yes? Okay. If you have any questions, please stand up. There is a question over here. Thank you. You can ask the question in Japanese, and I will have it translated to me, if that's better for you. Thank you. For those of you who are still thinking about a question or maybe are shy, please do not hesitate to contact me on my personal website. Oops. Hold on. Yes, you have it over there, and You have it right here, my website and my Twitter. So you can contact me there. Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Actually, my question is regarding your slide, saying the 1 million security expert is required.
Yes.
Do you think the requirement can be fulfilled by having the 100 million people to spend cybersecurity with their 1% of the workforce and time?
Yes.
What do you think?
So I'll repeat the question just to make sure I understood it. The question was, if we need 1 million more security professionals, perhaps one way to achieve that is by asking or getting 100 million people from the general task force to focus on security and get 1% of that to make them into security professionals.
Yes, it is.
So I think that's a great approach. That's a great way to think about it. Really, if you have a big workforce, which has hundreds of millions of people, all you need is that 1% to become concerned about security. The other part of that is there is a responsibility for us as people that are already in the business of cybersecurity, to make sure that we are actively creating more security people by becoming mentors or by opening up an internship program. I've been in the security industry for quite some time. And in the early days, I found it to be a closed club, an exclusive club, right? And maybe that was cool in the 90s. But now I think in order to face the challenges that we have ahead, we have to open up the club to more people. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally agree with that. Security people have to open the club.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. And I think, oh, we have one question here up front. Hi.
How is disclosing all the bugs a solution when there is a fundamental economic problem, which is a price mismatch between what the bad guys are offering and what bug bounties are offering? Because you can say, okay, it's working, the bug bounties are giving results, but in my opinion, you are just getting the top of the iceberg and you are not going to reach the bottom of the iceberg where the real stuff is. The zero days that will compromise your organization will come from that area, so it's a big problem.
Okay, so let me repeat the question. The question was, what is the logic or the viability of solving the problem of security vulnerabilities by disclosing all the bugs and by creating bug bounty programs, where in fact, the person is claiming, the real problems and the real vulnerabilities are the ones probably coming from deeper underground, the ones that the criminals are paying bigger amounts of money for, if I understand your question correctly. So again, I think there is a question of large numbers here. If we can get more and more and more vulnerabilities found and discovered and solved, it will make the life of those people that are trying to find those 0 days and sell them for a lot of money, it will make their life harder. And they will have to work harder to find that same vulnerability. This is, to use an analogy, it is a big swamp, right? And we can't drain it all, but we can start making it a little bit more shallow. We can make the problem space smaller so that they have to work harder. If the criminals or the vulnerability researchers are going to make $200,000 for selling one bug, they better work hard for it. Let's not make their life easy. And again, it's a big problem. But one way, I think, to start solving that problem is by getting more and more and more vulnerabilities disclosed. Thanks for the question. It's very relevant. I think that's all we have time for, right? Any more questions? Last question? Okay, so I'll repeat again. If you'd like to ask me a question in private, please don't hesitate to reach me through my website or my Twitter account. I'm very accessible. And I'd like to thank you again. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you.